Hello, everyone. Getting the reference images set up, and then I'll be on my way. Gonna see if we can get the weapon in Substance Painter today. It's actually been brought in before, but for this session, I'm gonna try to bring it back in. Somehow preview is unresponsive right now, so we'll let it do its thing, and then we'll jump into Maya. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to set up the window so that way we can actually see not just Maya, but Substance Painter, and you can see where I've left off. Let's see, window capture. Okay, so I brought the M45 pistol into Substance Painter. I did this on my own because it's sometimes can get a little weird going from one program to another if your computer doesn't hold up. But just in general, it was just easier to do that on my own. So we have the M45 pistol model in Substance Painter, and they're all the basic materials are there. Not necessarily the ones that I want, but sometimes what I like to do is I like to just as soon as I bring in a model into here before I get into like the nitty gritty actual surface and texture that I want, I at least just throw something on there. It just gives me an idea to just see how things are looking. So this is what I have right now. Hey, Hellforge, thanks for joining. Yes, we'll definitely save. Hope you've been well. I know it's yeah, it's been a while. Okay. So I'm also trying to figure out where I actually left off. So because I finished baking and then I threw on some basic materials. This is definitely not what I want. Like this is all very um early on, but this is just good to see. Sometimes ma- the matte materials, the ones that are not as glossy, are going to show you things about your model that shiny materials don't. So it's good to see like matte material and shiny materials on your object so you can really cover all your bases. I was testing out this wood. I'm not sure, like I have a couple references that I want to uh I want to emulate like the type of wood. So these this photo reference that I've gathered now is going to start coming into play. So like if we look at this wood here, this is more like a glossy polished wood. And then same as this one here. But actually this one's still the the highlights not as sharp. So let's see. This one, it's also the same type of wood, but because of the noise on it, it just breaks it up. So I'm trying to think of what if I want to have that noise, that procedural going on. Let's go all the way down to my main reference. I believe it was this one. Let's see, where is it? This one. Okay, so in this reference, you have the more like graded diamond-shaped pattern that goes throughout the whole grip of the wood panel. So that's what I want to do eventually. That actually, it might be the first thing I want to do versus trying to get the right glossiness for the wood because you're not going to get it if you don't put the actual detail in there. Dispersion of a bounce light is different. So um, yeah, this is basically what I want to do. I also noticed some things too, like this was my initial bake, so not everything's gonna come in. This detail did come in, although it looks like it could be stronger. We can add AO later on, like AO shadow to enhance the shadow. Even if it's nowadays it's PBR, they say don't fake any lighting or shading, but you can just you have to be very um, sort of in moderation. Don't push it. So I noticed somehow my bake didn't. There's a lip that I had here that's in the model in Maya. So I can go. So yeah, I'm just gonna open up really quick. I have it here. I could turn off this so we can see what I'm looking at it in Maya. Uh, so if I hide this, just want to see what happened. Hellforge. Yeah, it sounds like yeah, it's tough, but oh yeah, I'm glad you are here. I'm glad everybody that's able to still be here is great. You know, yeah, it's been a while. I also needed to take a break from everything. It helps to Saturdays are my time to revisit and just like just um, just kind of return back to a state that then after the rest of the week I'll slowly wear away, and then by the end of the week, the Saturdays and Sundays are really good. It's for I think a lot of people that are fortunate to have weekends off. So yeah, just needed some time. Native New Yorker, thanks. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so I have this little lip on the wood panel that looks like it didn't show up in the bake. Not sure why not, why it did do that. Can't find my substance painter. Okay, so we'll bring back substance painter here, and you can see what I'm looking at. So this is really good for anyone that is gets stuck on certain baking issues. So for example, if you look um, in my Maya model, I had a lip around the screw in there, and it's like a frame of the wood that's lifted, and you can actually see that in my my reference that I have. So this lip here around the screw. So that one, and also I can make this a little bigger. Oops. Okay. And we'll move this way. Move this over this way. Okay. So I think what happened is the wood panel didn't get included into the bake. So I can show this here if we go to texture settings. And I think, let's let's move this. Never know how to properly frame all this stuff so everybody could see. And so everything, all the elements can be seen easily. But yeah, let's look at the normal map and we can actually see if the wood panels were included. Let's see where the wood panel, so it should be in the upper left, and it looks like they weren't. So I might need to do a rebake on this. Yeah, it just looks like that's the case. I'm not seeing anything. And you can actually see it here. It's weird. In this view, it almost looks like there's no panels. There's none of the high poly that I have. So we can see what was the cause of that. So back in Maya, let's see. So wood panel high. This is my high. And then if we look at the low, I think I found it. Okay. So I know Hellforge is there. So Hellforge, do you know why? Can you tell from this? I know what it is, but can you tell why my wood panel did not bake? My wood panel high did not bake to the low poly. And I just want to make sure I can see it. Okay. Okay. I'm trying to click on the stream manager and it's taking a while. That's understandable. Sometimes you just gotta detach from everything for a bit. Definitely. No, because it was hidden. No. Um, when it comes to baking, I do let me just at least give you some more information on how this bake was set up. Because in Substance Painter, I mean, there are different properties. So in the texture settings, I wonder if this is going to show up. I hope it shows up. But in the bake mesh maps, does it show up? Doesn't look like it's going to show up. Okay, let me see if I can add the video. Oop, not video capture. Uh, window capture. Okay, let's do that. And then where is it? Substance Painter. Baking. That is huge. Okay, let's bring it here. Okay, so within the baking settings, we have towards the bottom of the main page and the common parameters, we have match, and that allows you to choose between having basically baking the low poly or the high poly to a low poly no matter what the naming conventions are of them, or so that would be always, or by mesh name. And I have it set to by mesh name, so that way I don't want, let's say, the screw detail to bake on the wood, and I don't want the wood detail to bake on the metal because it'll just look really weird. So I separate them in Maya and I say they have to match. So like if it says uh, trigger high, the trigger high detail will only bake on the matching name, the low poly with the matching name. So trigger low. On this end, it'd be what wood panel high would only bake on wood panel low. So I'm gonna go. I'll check. I'll check just in case. I'm gonna go back to the Twitch. Exactly. So Hellforge, you got it. Right. So exactly. It's not the same. It wasn't corresponding with it. So, but I do that sometimes with plural and singular objects. I forget to put the S, or I put the S and I shouldn't have put the S. So how do I turn off? Okay. I still feel like a noob. I'm trying to figure out how to remove. Oh God. What am I moving? Okay, here we go. There we go. Okay, so with that said, I have to actually go in and fix that. I wonder how long this is gonna take, just for a simple. That's why sometimes I don't like working in two programs at once. Okay, so let's go into Maya, and then I'll just change. I think it's fine to keep them together, so I think it makes sense to call it wood panels. So I'll just keep wood panels high, wood panels low. And before I do that, I'm just going to look really quick to see if there's any other detail that had not been baked. I see some real bad, let's see. I see some real bad artifacts, but I'll focus on one thing at a time. Okay, so Another thing I noticed too is I have the good high poly detail, but I don't have the updated low poly detail. I accidentally left the low poly piece here to jut out to the right. So I can actually fix that as I'm uh, setting up a new export for the wood panel. So let's see. So this is the low. Let's see. The mag release low, and then let's just look at the mag release high, and we'll match it. So I'm listening to anyone that's interested. I am not listening to any rock or metal today. I'm listening to a radio. If you know, Spotify has like you can choose a song you want to listen to and then click go to radio, and it chooses similar sounding songs. So I'm listening to the radio. I'm listening to a radio for the song Radio. Oh, I've had X Snap on for some reason. There we go. All right, so that's good. Oops. Also note, huh, wait a second. Something's not right here. Hmm, okay. This, I don't know why they're offset. Oh, I see. I'm glad I noticed that. I was doing a, huh, I have symmetry on, and I think when I went to shorten, what is this? I went to shorten one end, I ended up shortening the other one as well. That's what happened. Okay, let's fix that. Come on. Okay, now it should be one. Okay, that's better. I have to say, given the detail or the way that I modeled the high poly for this piece, I think it came out well. It baked well. So, like as if you recall, the this pattern here was not flush because I know when it bakes, it's gonna just bake down on that flat plane of the low poly. So, okay. All right, so now we have to go in and export this whole thing again. Again, there's other artifacts in here, and I'm gonna have to re-export later on. But I'm just focusing one at a time. I find that that's easier to work with than just get really overwhelmed about it. Also notice that trigger is not labeled correctly. So it's trigger and it's not trigger high. So that I have to fix too. Another thing that I want to set this up on my own because this is just, I don't know, it's just going to be, it might be useful for, so I might do it, but I have to make an exploded version of this weapon. And that just requires a lot of just moving things around. And when I'm streaming, for some reason, the one thing that chugs a lot is moving things. And it's just tedious enough as it is. So, okay, so let's label this trigger underscore high. Oh, you can't see because I got my little face here. I'm just gonna shrink it down. I wonder if I put it right here. It's kind of still in the middle, but it's okay. But anyway, I fixed the trigger high, so now it should match. Gotta save. It's Hellforge's thing to say that. I know. I think about it in my head. So high poly, I'll select everything. So file, export, selection, and I'm gonna have a window pops up, and I'll have to find where I put the high poly. I think this is it. Yep. Save it. If you're unsure ever about the changes you make, don't save over your high poly, or just in general, don't save over your files. Just save the old one as old or something, and then save, because you don't want it to mess up anything when you go to rebake in Substance Painter and realize you just made it worse, and then you can't go back. So close, and then let's go in and file, export, selection for the low. Save it. Replace. Okay. I'm okay. I'm jumping into the chat. Also keep an eye on the color ID. Painter loves to flip back to color to mesh color instead of vertex color, which makes you want to against the keyboard. I actually haven't experienced that. Or I have. It will. Every time I do a new project, it always goes back to vertex color. Or you're. So I use. That's funny. I use mesh color. But it does always. I always have to. That seems to always like that setting always seems to reset. Wait, what did I do? What? Who are you, and what did you do to poor Natalie? What was that referring to? I am working on a laptop for right now, so and I also don't have my. I have my tablet here. I didn't plug it in. I forgot about it until right when I was working, so that takes a second to do. I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm just working with this one display for now. Oh, yeah, I think everybody does that. I think we have this knack of just being compassionate about other ones that people that might run into what we did, where we say we didn't save and we lost all our work, and then we focus when we do our own stuff. We forget to save. Okay, so let's go in and file. Um, so these menus are you can't see it in the stream, but this is how you. Yes. Okay, so this is how you update your low poly, and then I'll show how to update your high poly. So, how to update your low poly, you have your model here, and let's just look at this. I don't want this little piece here. This is the mag release. So you're supposed to see it jut out here, but you don't want to see it jutting out on this side. So how we fix that, we'll go to Edit at the top, and then Project Configuration. Now I re-exported the new low poly. So I just now go after the project configuration window pops up, I'll go to File, Select, and I'll hunt down my new low poly. And when I find that, I hit Open, and I'll keep the normal map format at OpenGL, and I'll hit OK. So what that should do is, as long as your UVs and your model predominantly is the same, it will just update with the new stuff. It might take a second. It might keep the old stuff, the old data. Let's see what happened here. Okay, so it's loading. Right now, that little tiny change in geometry, basically it's nested inside, is causing this to recompute. So just going to let it recompute. I think actually what I am going to do is I am going to explode the weapon. Since Hellforge is the main viewer, I'm wondering if you would find that beneficial, if you don't know what that is, or um, if you would want to see that, or when I can explain a little bit more what that is. Oh, he said you listen to radio instead of proper music. Oh, that's funny. Um, no, so there's this thing. It's the so in Spotify, it says go to radio, and it's not necessarily a radio, but it's just it takes the song that you had and um, creates a playlist. It's a curated playlist based off that song. But I also do listen to radio. But recently, I used to be a big fan of this rock metal station in Orlando, in Florida, and it was amazing. It was called 101.1 WJRR Real Rock 101.1, and it was great. But recently, I know. Do you know Sirius? It's a satellite radio. They just came out. I don't know. Maybe it's been a couple years, but they have a new station called Turbo, and it plays like System of a Down, Deftones, Audio Slave, Velvet Revolver, and a bunch of other like Stone Temple Pilots, Linkin Park, and it's great. And Tool, a lot of Tool. So now everything is updated and it's perfect. I don't have to restart my object, and the trigger's fine too, which is interesting because I didn't rebake, and trigger, I guess, you know what I'm starting to think is it didn't look at the suffix and it didn't need to. I wonder if that's the case. But with that said, I'm going to go into my baking settings, and I have the habit, I think the new ones you don't have to re-upload the high poly, but for me I'm going to do that. So I'm going to remove it and then load the updated high poly. Where is it? Okay. Okay. Now the updated the new one, and everything looks fine by mesh name. Subsampling, we'll leave it at 4.4 time by 4. This is an overkill. It's at 2048 by 2048. And then I think the actual texture settings at the top, well, which we'll see in a second, is um, I think it's not at 2048 because the weapon still looks pixelated. Anyway, now we can actually see the rim of the wood panel, the screw frame. That's bacon. Short of you streaming paint drying. I'll most likely find a method. It is basically like streaming paint drying. We don't like watching paint dry. Um, I'll most likely find it both interesting and educational. I've been wondering what exploding meshes are since a few people have mentioned it. Oh, cool. Yeah. So I'll run through it then. And plus, that's what I normally do. Um, I'll try to go as quick as I can for that. And then I that's awesome. I didn't know you would have access to that channel, but I guess are you on iHeartRadio? Because that's where I started listening to them when I moved to New York. I wanted to hear them again because I like a lot of the DJs. And a couple of people mentioned exploding meshes when I was adding screws to my models. I had no idea how to get that to work in Painter, so I just joined the high poly details, the parts they were hanging out. It's all about the company when it comes to watching paint dry. That is nicely said, Hellforge. Amen to that. I find that the same with drinking too. You know, if you go out with you could have like the best drink in the world, but if it's with the wrong company, it just I don't know. But then again, a Moscow Mule for me, I'm all set. I could be next to like I don't know. I can't really think of people that I wouldn't want to be next to. But like I guess someone who's just not in the moment complaining. So speaking of paint drying, this is taking really long. So while Substance Painter is loading, and we can actually remove some of these references for now. We can leave this one at the bottom. Um, what I'll do is hide substance and I'll show while substance is it's going to take a second. So let's go into substance or sorry, Maya, and I'll show how to explode the mesh. There's different ways to do this. And this is just one, this is the way that I typically do it. But I found this to be the best way for me, at least for weapons like this. So what we're gonna do is now we just to kind of give a general base foundation here. The low poly, anything that's imported, not through the bake settings, but through the actual project, that needs to have UVs attached to it. And anything, and not only that, it has the UVs have to be the shells have to be in the 0 to 1 space. And if they're not in 0 to 1 space, technically Substance Painter doesn't care about it. So uh, with that said, when you go to do the exploded version, you want to keep your intact, the model that you know is basically the state of the model that is going to be seen in the game the most. So this is your main version, but any other exploded types, we want to import it. So it's going to be actual model, a model that's being shown in the 3D viewport. But we shouldn't have to rebake all of that stuff. That would be just too much. So we're going to want this model along with any other version of the model. So I'll save this one, this low, this is our bake. And then what I'll do is I'm going to duplicate all of this. And this is, let's see. Okay, so I'm duplicating the low poly, bring this up here. Actually, I really like exploded versions. I typically do the exploded version. I'll work on it once I get all the artifacts out, so I'm not, you'll see why. But basically, the way I just had to do with updating the mag release and updating the trigger, doing that and just exporting, that's a little, it feels just eventually going back and forth on one assembled weapon with a high poly assembled weapon. That's one thing to try to troubleshoot why certain areas aren't baking correctly and everything. But now we're going to duplicate that low, and that duplicate is going to carry over all the flaws of that low poly. So that's why it's best to get it to a good enough area, and you won't have to do double work. So if I bring this out here, I can basically it's up to you. Oops, let's see. It's up to you how you want to display this. Sometimes I'm like, well, if this weapon is going to be heavy in, let's say it, I'm gonna expand this a little bit more so we can enjoy some of the real estate on the screen. There we go. Okay, so if it's a weapon that it's very, I would say, visually appealing from the side, then you can put it like that. If it's a weapon or if it's a vehicle where you care more about the front and the back or the top and bottom, maybe I'll do it this way because I'll be looking at them and comparing them this way. But since this is a weapon, I'm gonna either bring it up here or bring it down below. Actually, I'll bring it in one of these and basically in the Z axis area. So over here on the bottom, like for example, I was doing an exploded version of an apple basket, and I had a bunch of exploded views of the apples in this area here, but the baskets were more going towards the x-axis. And you'll see why when, depending on how you set it up, the shadows can cast and it doesn't look right in Substance Painter. You want to set it up so you have the best display. So, let's see. Okay, now would be a really good time to also bring in the manual. And, the reason why is just looking at the reference and seeing how they exploded the weapons, and you can treat it kind of realistic. And actually see how a real weapon is exploded when it is. So we could do something like that. That's pretty intensive, but I also have all the pieces for that. The only one that I did not make is the recoil spring. And I have an idea of how to fake it in later on if I needed it. So that's part of the reasons why I didn't make it, although it would be rather simple. So it's really up to you of how exploded you want it to be. For example, if you know it's never going to be opened up in game, you might not need it to have it that have all these little components apart. Maybe you just want the top piece, the slide, and not even the wood panel separated. And you can also make different exploded versions that are at different stages. I'll show you. I'll show you that. And this is actually what I'm planning on doing. This is really cool. This is sort of laid out. I'm a little hesitant to make something like this where you have the pieces rotated. I just want them to be translated and not rotated. So um, I sort of like this view, and I think this is something I can find in the manual here. Let's see. M1 parts section. So according to this, it's in here at page 62 or 52. Okay, so this is the exploded version. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be surprised if the other one that's not a drawing but more picture based has an exploded version too. So this is what I'm saying at different levels of explosion. I don't know if that's even a term, but I'd say different levels of explosion. So this one only has it has the barrel in the middle, and then you have the slide separated. It's really up to you. The reason I think the exploded versions are really good is it gives you access to making sure there's no artifacts in between where if you don't see it you wouldn't know that they are there, and then it later on, let's say if you need to cock back the weapon, you'll notice there's just this white line from the baking that you didn't bother texturing because you didn't see it beforehand. So this just allows you to clean up any artifacts early on. You could do something like this where the mag is coming out. Um, you can put it in states that you know will occur in your game. So for example, you have the hammer cocked back. That could be something. So you just put different parts, different animations of your weapon. Let's see. Okay, we're not going through this whole book, but I am seeing if there's any exploded views here. Okay, if I just type in exploded, let's see if that shows up. Okay, there's a special thanks in here for explode. Okay, here we go. Nope. Nope. Oh, hey, I think I just passed something. No. Uh, so you could do something like this as well. If you know Substance Painter's 360 lighting, it doesn't go, um, just doesn't go in another axis, right? You'll notice that it just kind of goes in the y-axis or however high up the sun is. So rotating your parts will allow you to see in different light. So that's also encouraged as well. That's something that I could do here. So I can rotate this weapon at a 90-degree angle. And right here I'll get another angle or another lighting that I didn't have before. And you know what? I may just do that. So let's do that. I could put it at 90 or 75. It is whatever you want it to be. So like I can just keep this down here. I could just move this off to wherever I want it. I'll put negative 0.5, and then it's that literally could just be one variant. It's not necessarily the exploded. one I was talking about, but that's something. And then I could go now do what I was saying and do an exploded version. Let's see. Drinking and watching paint dry both require good company. Yes. Not the most social person in general. Yeah, I haven't actually been to I haven't really been out to a bar really. When this before this whole since this whole thing started. Redcoats. Hey, welcome. Thanks for joining. That's awesome. Thanks for tuning in. How are you doing? So, Hellforge Redcoat is actually another game industry dev. He's a he's done so much, but he's mainly programmer. What lead programmer, senior programmer at id Software. He just worked on the Doom games too. So let's see, you could do it with textures as well, just a cylinder with a gradient map. Yep, yeah, it's you can be resourceful. A slight angle to get the illusion of a spring. That's cool. Yeah, I've done that too. Why model springs? I don't know. So exploded mesh means separated into its component. Basically, it's whatever. It's basically a more disassembled version of the original, and I would say that also because I'm taking into account characters. So you might have a character with the hat, and then a character without the hat. The hat's on the side, or you have a character with armor, and then you have the character next to it without its armor, and the armor is on the side. Or if you go back to that apple basket that I was saying, you can have a basket full of apples, and then next to it you'll have the basket on its own, and then the apples on their own. And this is mainly for texturing. This is not to like bring into the game like this. Okay. All right. So I was just trying to see if there was any other version that I can use. I think this one I'm gonna do what this one shows because it is cool. So let's I'm gonna have to squeeze this Maya window a little in so I can actually see what I'm doing a little better. All right. So I duplicated the weapon. I'm trying to figure out actually if I wanted to be above or below. You know what? We'll bring this down here. So any explosion, I'll treat the lower level like my explosion area. So let's do that. We'll now start breaking it apart. So I think I'll make this like an extreme exploded version, and then any nuanced ones I'll do later. So okay. Give a little space in between so that way you can actually see the object. So now if I'm in Substance Painter, I'll be able to go up inside here to look and see if it's baked correctly. Because right now I can't tell with that other view. So mag low. The mag can be, you can be fancy and pull it out in the, basically on the same axis, but I'm not doing that right now. Just keeping it like that. So I'll do that. It's actually kind of, this feels very therapeutic because this whole time you're modeling, you just want it to look good assembled, right? But then now you can actually go in and break it apart. Okay. So I'm utilizing that photo that I have in the bottom right hand corner to help guide me where I want everything to go. But then I might just disregard and do my own thing. Now remember also, these are all the already pre-UV'd parts. And I don't have to rotate it. Like, for example, this part, the reason that it's laying on the, well, the reason it's rotated is because it's laying on a hard on a surface in the world, but this I don't have to really rotate it. It doesn't have to be sitting on anything. So this is where you can actually take advantage that we work in digital. Everything could be floated, and you don't have to worry about really anything, any gravity. So just like this image, I could actually, it doesn't actually explode everything, but I can. So remember, everything is zeroed out. So I'm working at the most exploded, or I'm going to start basically doing the most exploded state, and then I can duplicate these and start zeroing out everything. Or I could do this and just duplicate it, move it to the side, start exploding it even more. It's really up to you. But I figured since these are already in the other model that I can take this out. And it holds up because I modeled it so it supported that. So why not just go for it? So I'll bring this down here. That's good. It's really up to me how far I want to go. Like, I know this for a fact, or maybe it's, yeah, I don't know if this is super accurate, like the real piece, but it just allows me to see inside. Maybe I want to do something else. So I think that might be good. If I want to, I can remove this piece too, like that. But it wouldn't matter because I never created it, so it will be taken out. We can keep it like that. And then the magazine release. Um, why not? So I took it out. Okay, so now this is a real exploded view. I could go even further and move these further apart from each other. If I find that in Substance Painter I still can't see exactly what I need to see. But I think this is a good part. see. Lead UI programmer. Yes. I think I understand it a bit better. It's something I'm going to have to experiment a lot with before I get it down. Can incorporate into my workflow. Absolutely. Um, I know I didn't get into it until I realized I needed to see the inside barrel of my weapon. There was an artifact, and then I realized I had to do that exploded view. That's when I started using it. So I've been doing so far, haven't really needed it, but it never hurts to know how to do it properly for the next project. Absolutely. Are you exploding both the high poly and low poly, or just one of them? Just the low poly, and I'll show you um, what that means. So, let's see. One of the more fun things I got to do in Doom was take the weapon components and feed their transform values into some of the reticles. That way, as the animator shifted the moving parts of the weapon, shifted the moving parts of the weapon, the reticle responded 1-to-1. Oh, interesting. Wait, so was the reticle, was this like a live reticle or, because I know Doom is it's crazy. There's so much in there. I'm just thinking because I work with a weapons programmer, we can have conversations about all the different nuanced things you can do to really improve the interaction of the weapon. But that's yeah, that's awesome. So do you work with a lot? Do you get to work a lot with weapons? I know different three. I asked because like I know different companies, they have different um goals and involvement with weapons. Like for us, surprisingly, even though Just Cause was a very a weapon heavy game, the UI designer didn't work too much in it, which was very interesting. They worked on a lot of more of the when you're flying and the characters interacting with, or the players interacting with the grappling hook mechanisms. We have the whole menu for the different, the retooler they call it. It's like all these different unlock features you can get. Wow. They show there's a lot of values that go into the reticles of Doom. They show off all kinds of things you wouldn't even notice at first. That's so cool. Yeah, I'm sure. When you said that, I was like, wow, that's something that we would never go as in depth. When I see Doom, it's so heavy in that. I can't imagine these invisible features that are there that we don't know that existed, but if you took them out, we'd definitely notice. Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so Hellforge asked about if we would need to do this the low poly and high poly, or if it's just one or the other. So with this method, since going back to that substance painter only recognizes UVs in the 0 to 1 space. So what we're going to do is we'll keep this one. I'm just going to make one more exploded view, and then we can call it out off, call it a day for the explosions. So let's duplicate this one more time, and we're going to do my favorite one, which I feel like it's super simple, but it sends the message across. Let's get. So we're going to look for a cocked version of the weapon. So something like this. And just going to replicate that because that's something that's going to be in the game or my game a lot, and I want to make sure that there's no artifacts right where this pose is going to be. So let's duplicate that and we'll move it. Let's see. This positioning sometimes will get it can annoy you if you don't position the different ones right. Like you'd go up and say, "No, I wish I put it on the left and not on the right." Or I wish I put it in the bottom and not on the top. Or oh, I put this too close or I put this too far apart. So I'm just trying to figure out where I want this to go. All right, I figured it out. So we're going to lower this down here and we're going to put the exploded version right under the sideways version. All right. Wait, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay. Where's my exploded version? All right, there we go. So negative 0.5. So now we have all our exploded versions there, and I just have to go in and let's ready this weapon. So for this pose, we'll have it, let's see. I'm turning on, I hope this doesn't crash. Okay, I'm saving. I thought this was going to crash for a second. Okay, so we have this this X-ray view of the weapon, and I just want to make sure I cock it back not too far, just right. So there's a lot of little mechanisms I put in here as well that would rotate internally, but I'm not worried about that right now. Okay. So we'll bring this back. It's not listening to me. Go back. Okay, let me just make sure. I have to find one that's accurate, so okay. There we go. Slide barrel recoil. Okay. I am gonna bring this back actually. Okay. We're gonna rotate this down like that, and then get the recoil slide. Okay. So not 100%, it might not be 100% accurate, but at least it's something. Let's see, the major thing that stopped me from exploding stuff is that I'm not sure how to get a good bake when the LP and poly aren't exactly in the same location. Yeah, I'll get to that. That's really cool. I've only seen a few bits and pieces with the technical side of Doom. Yeah. Yeah, I would love that's why I've been in this conversation with several people. You ever notice when they come out with art books or dev books, it's mostly on the concept. And I wish, and I think a lot of people, developers, and I'm sure especially gamers, would love to see books not just going in depth as far as the concepts goes, but models and some of the UI and the technical specs. They don't do that, and I feel like that's a whole target audience that's totally missing out and not being able to see all of the cool stuff that pertains to the technical side rather than just the visual. You have visual technical, but I don't know. There's so much more we can do. So many ways to profit. Okay, so we got this. So now I can get into exactly how are we gonna work with these and bring them into Substance Painter, and also how to set it up in a way that won't conflict with our current bake. So with the premise that Substance Painter only looks at the UV 0 to 1 space, what we want to do is we're going to open up the UV editor and let's see, and cross your fingers that this actually docks right this time, because I always have a problem docking the UV editor. And we want to bring all of their UVs and just slide it over to the 1 to 0 to 2 space, I believe. Okay, come on. All right. I'm trying to get this. Oh god. Trying to get it docked. This is important. We need to see this in the. Did it do it? Yes, it did it. Okay, so we got that. And now we have to dock the toolkit. Perfect. Awesome. Close enough. I really like the soundtrack of Doom, but it was downright fantastic to listen to Mick Gordon talk about how he put it together and everything involved in it. Oh geez, I haven't listened to the soundtrack much. I know there's some very popular tracks. I think I actually have them saved on Spotify. Crushes fingers for good luck is now unable to play guitar. Oh no, you sacrificed your fingers to give me luck. That's so nice. Thank you. All right. So Maya's squeezing the tabs on the right. Feels like they're suffocating a little. But okay, so without further ado, we're gonna just name these different exploded versions. So I'm gonna label this just for me. Um, I label it let's say 90 degree, but rotate 90. So that way I know. If I wanted to make this even more drawn out, I might do a rotation every 45 degrees. So rotate 45, rotate 90, rotate underneath so you can actually see underneath. It's enticing. It's very enticing. Okay. I gave myself a really good idea, so I'm just gonna live up to that and move it. Okay. So I'm gonna label this rotate 180. Oh, ha. And also actually rotate it. So Let's do 180. And this allows me to just see it a little differently. That's cool. Okay. I can also do you can do different rotations. So this is I sometimes get really involved in. I think this is really fun once you start getting into it. That's what you'll notice. And then I could duplicate this one again. I know it feels like it's um suffocating seeing like seeing the viewport a little crunched. But I just realized I don't want to have to go back and re-export again once I do this, specifically for these purposes. I'll keep it at a 75-degree angle. So this is almost like if it's holstered. So later on I can incorporate a holster as well. Okay. Okay, so that way I am not bombarding the main one. I don't want to put it on the side. Okay, so I'll just label this holstered, right? And then the other angles are technically the really exploded version, the truly exploded version. So um, I'll just label that cocked, and then we'll get the other one down here and label that exploded. Cool. Did you post that? Okay, on my Discord. Awesome. Hey, Redcoat. Thanks for the follow. I just noticed that. Do you stream at all? I think I asked this before. Okay. Yeah, just let me know, cause I would love to attend one of your streams. Okay, I'm saving. So now we got the low, and I totally made way more variants than I expected, and I think that's really good. So we have that. Oh, and another thing. I don't know if I want to do this for this one. Hmm. The magazine. Make it kind of dropped out. It's very tempting. The reason I say this is because the magazine's gonna have some sort of, as I had mentioned with Hellforge, the magazine has like it creates marks of history almost if it keeps coming in and out of the area. So like if you have it so it looks like it's coming out, you'll be able to know exactly where to place the streaks and if it looks right. So so I think I want to do that. So I'm just gonna eyeball the, oops, eyeball the axis there, and then just bring it down a little. Okay, so like that. Dang, that's a lot of different versions. So I covered all my bases, I think. The only thing that I could have done was maybe push the trigger in, but that's more collapsed versus exploded or expanded, so I think that's fine. All right, so if you see, hopefully you can see I'm not blocking anything with my little square. So we have the holstered, rotate 180, cocked, exploded, and let's try to bring this down here. All right. So this one's the only truly exploded one. It's over here. Thinking of actually bringing this even further down. Um, you know what? Dang. So another thing that I try to get in the habit of when I'm streaming is to speak out loud of what I'm saying. And it looks like I'm very indecisive, but I swear if I was very silent, it'll look like I have an idea of what I'm doing. But I figured it helps to um, verbally just talk and say exactly what I'm thinking. So that way you can see the process, get a better idea, and understand that everybody, no matter what experience, will always have these constant thoughts of back and forth when they're working on whatever they're working on. I think if you're one tracked and you're kind of like a routine and you have it almost is like I don't think you're actually doing what your potential is. So you just have to keep pushing and not necessarily second guessing, but figuring out if this could be better this way, would it be this better this way? So now we take all the this is going to be a lot. Typically when I am done setting up the views and everything, what I would typically do is combine all the meshes so that we don't have to worry about it. But don't think that's the case here. So what I can do is select all of these. This is going to be a lot. So select, shift select, not the group node itself, but all the children of that group. Knowing not to select the low poly. We were not touching the low poly. We're only touching the exploded meshes and all the other variations. Oops. Okay. There we go. Okay. So I think I'm missing the wood panels at the bottom. Oh, nope. That selected everything. So we go to transform. in the UV editor. And let's see. Just catching up on the. I see someone entered. Giovanni! I was still a pretty cool person with streaming, so I'm getting around these parts. Yes. Thanks for hosting me. Let's say red coat. Yeah, Giovanni, always happy when you show up to the stream. I really appreciate it. And you've been around since the beginning too, so I really appreciate it. Just like Hellforge. Redcoats, I don't stream yet. I just got a nice new PC a couple of weeks ago. I'm moving next week. I'll be setting my new PC up in a room for a streaming studio. Awesome. That's so cool. There's like multiple things in there that are really exciting. You got a new PC, you're moving. Are you sticking around where you are? Um, am I allowed to say where you are located? Well, I guess Doom is in Austin, isn't it? But I hope you've been okay over there. I know it's been very intense and there's been a lot happening. So hopefully you've been staying safe with that. But that is awesome. I think when anytime somebody says a PC, they got a new PC nowadays, all I think about, because I just got immersed in Twitch within the last year, I think about, oh, perfect time for streaming. Well, I'll definitely attend your stream. Unless there's a deadline, there's no reason not to experiment a bit to see which is the best version. 100%, or you're doing a commission. Um, yeah. Yeah, I always now when I talk to people, I always ask any like clients or something, I'll always ask or let them know that I really do like R&D, and they typically like that when I show them what I did in an hour or something. They're like, "Huh, you know what? Keep doing that." And at least it's a good channel of communication. You keep the passage, I guess, of communication clear, and you want people to understand the importance of it. It's my philosophy, but I'm also a freelance beginner, so my point of view is probably very different. No, I 100%. It's it's differentiates from everybody. Moving over to the other side of town, close to the office. Ah, cool. That's awesome. That's like what I did when I was moving. I ended up after working at Avalanche for a year, and my lease was up. I said I'm moving next to the studio. So that's so cool. Just in time. Actually, I guess Texas doesn't have a real winter, does it? So I was gonna say, just before, right when it's getting cooler, that's like probably the best time to move, but not during the middle of winter. Like I always have a habit of that, of moving during the winter. Okay, so going back, I selected all my models, and now uh, this is really simple. I might jinx myself here, but this is really simple if everything goes well. So I'm gonna right click and go to UV component, and you could do a command A. Okay, let's see. Okay, so if you can see, notice how everything is selected. I also want to make sure, can everybody still see me? It looks like it got frozen on my end. So I'm gonna wait a little. If you're seeing the stream good, just post it in the chat. Okay, you can still see it. Yeah, I think it. The stream being a bit choppy has to do with just running so many programs on my laptop, I think. And also, I haven't looked into the docs that some people have sent me of how to fix that. I'm not great. I'm not really the greatest of streamers when it comes to uh, following up on that. Just had to pause and unpause it to unfreeze. All right, cool. Yep, can see you. All right, so then I will proceed. Thank you guys. Okay, so I have everything selected, and if you're in Maya, you should see this option in the UV toolkit. If you're in another software, it should hopefully be in there. In this day and age, there should be a some sort of UV toolkit. So I'm going down to the move section, and it should say 1. And also, let me. I just realized something as well. Uh, I marquee selected everything in that one space, um, which is fine, but also just make sure that if you do select everything, and let's say you already had something that's off on the left side, what I'm going to do is shift everything one UV space over. If I had these selected, let's see if I have these selected, which I moved one to the left previously, that means that means those pieces might accidentally get into the 0 to 1 space. But actually, to avoid that whole situation, instead of doing it right or left, just do it up or down, and you won't accidentally get any pieces accidentally included into that. Okay, so I'm selecting all of them, and I'm bringing it down 1. So hopefully, oh, I think that worked. So if I zoom in a little bit, let's collapse this UV toolkit. Can't collapse it. Dang it. There we go. Okay, so yeah, everything now is going to be 1 down, and if I select all the, oh god, why are you zooming out? Oh no. Okay, so if we collapse this outliner and just select all the exploded views and compare that with the UVs on the low poly, on the official low poly, you'll see that. Okay, so here's where that one is, and then if we select the low poly, let's get that gonna get that UV checker. Where are you? It's almost like you have to pull all the way. Okay, there you see it. Okay. So I'm gonna click on this UV checker, and it's gonna show a checker map wherever, or should. It's not showing it. Okay, well, it should be showing it. Okay, so for some reason it's not showing the checkered, but I like putting that checker map so it only shows up in the spaces that there is something populating that area. Okay, but we have it there at the bottom, and then on the top we have our low poly. So now Substance Painter will not compute anything outside of that one space. To go a step further to ensure that it's not going to be calculated, you could go into all of this at the bottom and add like a 1 or a 2, and it will allow you'll definitely make sure that the bakers, I guess the bake doesn't pick up these these pieces. But you basically said it, you told Substance Painter that they're outside of the 0 to 1. So it will disregard it. So with that said, you basically have your low poly and the all the bake all the texture is baked onto that low poly. Since the UV space, it repeats itself, the exploded versions are all going to benefit from the 0 to 1 space without being on the 0 to 1 space, if that makes sense. Let's see, how forge. I haven't looked into Blender's UV kit, but I probably should be paying closer attention to it. Right now, it's working well enough with it, but it might pay off in the long run to learn it properly instead of bare minimum. So, Hellforge, are you? I forget. Are you currently in Blender now? Is that your primary software, or did you get your hands on a Maya license or a Maya educational student version? I also noticed recently that they upped their security on getting for those trying to get a Maya student license. Before, all you had to do was enter your university and when you're graduating. And typically, I just tell people if you did go, put it in and just put your graduation date um, as something else if you had already graduated, because you're still technically a student and you're trying to make it into the industry. But now they're really looking at your requiring documents to the point that when I had put in a document, it rejected it, and I had to give them even more information. So I can see why now Blender's actually growing because Maya just made it even harder for those that can't afford at all the the paid version. They just can't even get it. They can't even try it anymore. So so yeah, like now I could select my low poly. I learned it doesn't really matter how you select the low poly, but this is what I'm going to do. I'm selecting the children of the low poly group and then selecting all the other ones. And I'll do file export selection. Now notice I'm not going to worry about the high poly because the high poly already is doing its job. I'm just updating the low and I'm exporting. And I'm replacing it, so I'm overwriting what I have. It's just going to take a little bit more time because we're working with more meshes. That's funny because we we rebaked and we won't need to rebake with all of these other variant models in the low poly because we didn't change the high poly. We're just changing the low poly, not UVs, but what's included into the low poly uh, FBX. Okay, so let's save this. I'll move this a little over. And this all will make sense once we actually work with it. Because right now it's just looks like a bunch of different just floating guns. So, okay, here we go. So now we're going to go back into Substance Painter and wow, okay, it is still loading. That's insane. Okay, just so you can get an idea of what I'm dealing with right now. All right. So I've been doing all that stuff, and it looks like it's still baking. I guess I would have to stay in Maya a little longer then. We'll just wait for maybe a minute or two, see if it goes up. Um, okay, this is the perfect time to check on the chat. Blender is primary 3D. Still haven't gone around to getting a Maya, so I probably can't get a student license nowadays. Yeah, I think it was a little more lax before, but they upped it. Somebody don't have the money for anything else. Did you bake it at 16K? No, I can't eat. I remember once I tried baking for a character. I tried baking 8K and never again. Each each map that I exported, it was in a Photoshop file, but it came up to 32 gigabytes and it just crashed all the time. Maybe one out of 5 times was it successful. And I said never again. The most I do is 4K. I have to be strategic and creative in trying to get the detail I want in 2K or 4K. And it's get a bit frustrating at times though because all the software is so bloody expensive, and I'm not sure how many of the studios around me except Blender. Yeah, so it's an interesting dilemma because I've seen studios who rightfully are used to the software and they want just to decrease ramp up time, they want one people or candidates who already know the software. That said, um, I've seen studios who are super aggressive on they don't want anyone else that is unless they work primarily with their tools. And if the candidate expresses any sort of liking to another software, now they're not fitting in with the culture. Um, on the other hand, I've had experience on the other end of it where we don't really look at the candidate and we don't look at the candidate's software, the current software, as that's the only software they know or that they're going to know. But rather that's some they might have a perspective to tackle a problem in a different angle than everybody that knows one software. Uh, I feel like it's kind of in the middle nowadays, but I'm not sure. I can't speak to that. No, the money to buy it up front. Totally. What I would suggest is always emphasize your willingness to learn new software because you don't want to get misconstrued as a person. And I've seen people like this who just don't want to learn software. And they're like, I want to keep this software that I know. And when I go to a company, they're going to adapt to my software. I'm going to teach them how to use this software. That's like an infiltrator. It's like a company that wants to take you, um, they want your ideas, but you shouldn't expect to change like that what they're doing is wrong and I'm right. That's not you. So just emphasize that when you're talking to studios, um, saying that this is the tools you know, and and sometimes if there are people who are biased on software, sometimes talking to them not about this bringing up Blender versus Maya, but rather talking about the UV, editing UVs. Each software is going to have its dedicated tools for UV editing, and right there is common ground. It's interesting. Become friends with people based off of talking about UVs, but um, then they'll see that you know what you're talking about. It's not the tool per se, but you and your ability to perform the task no matter what tool's in front of you. Just keep emphasizing that. So they don't nobody groups you as someone who might be, oh, I do this software and when I join a company they have to allow me to use it. Okay, I think